So I made this video a couple months ago about homemade AC that I was making, and we had this procedure we had, and in that video I talked about another idea that my friend and I discussed making and didn't do because it seemed too complicated. But in the end, actually, the first idea that I made a video about just didn't cool enough. It wasn't cool. I'm in my car and it's just not cold enough. I'm sweating and nasty and very uncomfortable. So we went with the other idea and we tried again. So I do want to show this because I've used it all summer and it has been quite satisfactory. So the basic idea is cooler, water, and ice in here. I found for a 40-minute drive in about 100-degree weather, well 95 with a feeling of 100-degree weather, 4 cubes of ice, 4 cube holders of ice trays, 4 ice trays, plus about 36 ounces of water would be in here. And that would last me to the time I got home, which is about 40 minutes. I once had to use it for more like an hour and a half, and by the end I'd say it wasn't cold enough anymore. But so 4 ice cube trays, which I had in my freezer already, and water, which I had in my refrigerator already. There's no use of energy that wasn't going to be used anyway. In here. And then, on the top of the cooler, I put this pump. I got this from an RV store that sells RVs and pieces. This is a pump for some kind of same purpose, to make a sink run or something. So it's this little pump, and I wired it up so that it went to a cigarette lighter. So it's a 12-volt device, which is the hard part, was to find a pump that ran on 12 volts, but I wanted it in my car. So I put this into the car charger. I used a splitter actually to run my Sirius and this, and it was fine too. This doesn't draw very much. And it was pulling up the water from inside the cooler. There's my entryway, and out here. So water is pumping there, and then I'm wearing my jacket. So my jacket, this we did not finish and was not ideal, but it was pretty good. My jacket got from a thrift store for $5. I ripped off the sleeves because of a failure. And we had sewed tubing inside there. Now, we couldn't get, I bought much more tubing than we could get in here. So I would wear this and the tubing would be around me. The cold water, ice water, would come through the tubing and come all the way, and it would be on my back. I found that eventually I liked sitting on it too, some of it, and I wanted some on my legs. So I would sit on my legs and sit on it and have it on my jacket. And it was really cold when I would turn it on. I would turn it on and the cold water would come through, and at the beginning, particularly at the beginning of a drive, it would be very cold water, you know, but it felt good because it was so hot outside. I liked it, how cold it was. My wife tried it and thought it was too cold when it was directly on her skin, so she liked the jacket where things were protected. I liked it just fine when it was just the tubing sitting on my legs, keeping me very cool. So it worked quite well. It was a little strange. One negative is there's nothing on your face. And so your body feels cool, but your face feels hot, and that's a little odd. And since I never managed to get anything on the sleeves, my arms were a little bit warm too. I would run the blower, normal blower in the car so that there would be a little bit of wind blowing. And that was also nice. I think I would prefer to have the blower than not have the blower. So it went pretty well. I really did use it all summer long, and it never was a pain to do with the ice and water because it was coming right from the freezer. I took some bottles of water down to work and had a freezer down there, and I just switched back and forth every day. You know, if you wanted to use it for 2 hours, you need a bigger cooler or some way of making the ice stay longer, so a second cooler that just holds the ice. So for example, one time I had the ice water in there ready to go, but I didn't use it. I didn't need it. It just wasn't cold enough. And when I got 40 minutes later, it was almost all still ice. When I used it, when it came through the tubing, it lost, you know, it used all of its cooling energy on me to cool me. And by the time I got there, it was usually melted. Still cold, but most of the ice was melted. But if I didn't run it, then all the ice was still there. So if you had a separate cooler that was all ice and this, you could probably get many hours out of it. Seemed like too much of a pain. So, in any case, what I discovered is homemade AC for the car. It was pretty good. But I think that this idea is way better than this, and the car isn't the best use for it. Because you're trapped in there, and you're going to have to get more ice later, and you're going to have all that annoyance, you can't really use it for a long period of time. You'd have to be like me and have a very old car that you're unwilling to fix the air conditioner for. Why not just have the AC working? But there are people out there, so maybe that's all right for that, for a 40-minute drive or so. But I felt like this idea is good enough that it should move on. So I bought some more tubing. This is thinner tubing. I'm not sure if the thinner tubing is right. I tried another one just to see what it would be like. And what I'd like to do is sew this into a little mat and and then for a seat and a back on a chair. And so you would just throw it on and you'd sit in your chair outside at the farmer's market, outside watching your kid play soccer, anytime you're stuck outside, and all you need is a cooler, which you have anyway. Now, here's the problem. How do you power the cooler? How do you power the pump? What do you do? I haven't finished with my thinking yet, but a hand pump seems better. When I was in the car, what I eventually came to as I learned more about it and used it more, I would take the cigarette lighter, plug it in, let the cold water flow through the tube, 22 ounces of tube. That would take 30 seconds, and then I would unplug it. And then 5 minutes later, 8 minutes later, whenever it was hot, I would do it again. So I hardly used the pump at all. If I had to do this, some kind of hand crank while driving, I'm not sure how safe that would be. But if you're sitting in your backyard or at the farmer's market or wherever, and you've just got this cooler with a little thing and you crank it up and now you're cool, that seemed like it was a good idea. A cousin was talking about how bass fishermen might want something like this and a jacket, and my friend was saying, well, then we don't even really need any water source. You don't need a cooler. You just drop your pipe, your tube down into the water, which the bass fisherman is sitting in. Drop it down deep enough, the water's cool, it just comes up, and you don't need this recycling of water in your cooler. I don't know how much it matters. Most people seem to have coolers, many of them. The one I'm using is quite small. I suspect many people do better. We'd make some with bigger coolers and smaller coolers and jackets and seats. I don't know, it does seem like people don't have to suffer out there with this idea. So many times seeing people suffer at a festival. Yeah, look at that. Now everybody's cool.